And we are now live. Welcome to Direct Line Live with Jackie Sachstein and Mark Uncapher. And I'm Dwight Patel. We are talking about elections, post-elections. This is the second day of the election.
We literally have not gone to sleep, have we, Jackie? We have been up since 6 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, right? Because we were out at the polls helping out.
Yes, this is the resulting hair of me being awake for over 24 hours.
Yeah, I tell you, I went to bed and I woke up again and nobody was. Oh yeah, I woke up again. I mean, I went to bed and woke up again around 11:30 and
woke up again
at 11:30 p.m. or this morning?
No, last night. After we did our election night cover at 9, I went to bed. Then I woke up around 11. And then I was talking to friends and folks around the country and calming down some of my friends about it's not that. And here's the thing. I do want to say we're going to win, but at the end of the day, it is not, this is not the end of the world. It is not 2008, everyone. There's not going to be statehood for DC. There's not going to be amnesty. There's not going to be a tax increase because one, we picked up 5 seats in the House. We might pick up another 4 or 5, which cuts into Nancy Pelosi's majority. We still have the majority in the Senate, and I still think we will win the Michigan Senate seat.
And hey, big win. We can go shoot up heroin in Oregon and not get arrested.
What is wrong with that?
What?
But anyway.
Did they legalize heroin?
Yeah. It's really interesting. My dad explained it to me really well because this whole thing with Wisconsin marijuana, I was like, okay, I kind of understand maybe what they're trying to go for here is if people can get their hard drugs from legitimate sources, there's less of a chance of overdose because, or them being killed because it was laced with something dangerous. My dad goes, well, here's what really happened. You could get it from a legitimate source where they tax the crap out of it for $75 a portion, or you can go to your drug dealer on the street for $20 a portion. What do you think people are going to go for? So really, they might end up regretting this decision.
And where are they going to get the $75?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I must say, you know, it is one of those things where they need to, what do you call?
But let's go back to your path to victory, Dwight. Explain to me how that works.
Okay, my path to victory
Let's see the map. Let's go to the videotape. Let's go to the map.
Okay, I'm about to fire up the map. Give me a second to share screen.
I both think that this race is far from over. I think.
Okay, now, Mark, this is my pathway. My sources tell me North Carolina has gone for Trump, as has Georgia, my sources. Thank you, my source in North Carolina. We all know who you were talking about. Anyways, okay, this is my path. Pennsylvania goes with us.
And that's 273 right there.
Yeah, and that's the path, right? You know, we take that. We're at 273, and I'm very confident.
Now, what state did you? What else did you flip?
It was North Carolina.
North Carolina, Georgia. Okay, what I did was I put North Carolina and Georgia in the president's column.
Right.
Alaska, it's gonna go president's column.
Yeah, right.
Nevada is still undecided, and this is in Arizona. We may flip. So we win the 20 votes in Pennsylvania. We're at 273. Joe Biden can win the.
There is one extra there in Maine that you didn't count that we got.
Yeah, there's one more in Maine, but this is I'm just simplicity, and this is the way they're not splitting the votes on 270towin.com. So, but this is our path to winning. You know, we've got Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, and then we win Pennsylvania.
I think that we're looking really good in Pennsylvania right now, but I mean, obviously there's still so much
shenanigans.
Shenanigans, I think, could be a potential. I mean, again, I think I'm going to come across as the crazy conspiracy theorist to match my hair right now tonight. But I think this race is far from over. I think that we have seen evidence of some kind of mischief in Wisconsin, Michigan, a little tiny bit in Arizona, but also in Pennsylvania as well. And I think we're also going to be facing a couple of weeks of litigation in a lot of these battlegrounds.
And here's the thing. There was no blue wave. Just like 2018, there was no blue wave. I don't call picking up 16 seats is not a wave. What
Well,
we picked,
16 seats when you flip control is enough, but you're right. It
I
was,
mean, we
yeah,
took more seats back in
correct,
2010, and
correct.
in '94, that was phenomenal. '94, we
Right,
really had
yes,
tables there.
right.
And also last night, we held on to the Will Hurd seat in Texas 23.
We picked up a governorship.
Yeah, New York 2, Congressman Peter King. The Nassau County GOP lives to fight another day. You know, that is all party organization there. That Andrew Garbarino won that seat because that was a seat that should have been a slam dunk for Democrats. Because the demographics of Nassau County is changing. It is not what it used to be. It is not the.
Right. So let's come back. Wait. Before we go off on Nassau County, let's come back to the races that people are paying attention to.
Yep.
Well, I think
I feel like I'm channeling Don Irvine here to try and keep Dwight on task.
I feel like in a more general sense, although we saw this most poignantly in Florida, I think that one of the most astounding things we've seen is Trump's, the way he resonated with the Latino vote. And obviously, we broke that down more specific. Mm-hmm. It was the Cuban Americans who were voting for him off the basis of we don't want socialism in this country. And I think my bigger point here is if there's one big takeaway and one big win for the Republican Party as a whole is that if the AOCs of the world keep trying to move the Democratic Party further and further left, it actually may help the Republicans really lock in that huge and ever growing voting demographic of the Latino vote for future campaigns. I think that that's going to be a really, really important long play.
Yeah, and here's the thing: Governor Ehrlich last night on our election night show made a really good point. He goes, a lot of these Hispanics coming to America, they're fleeing socialist countries like Venezuela,
right,
Nicaragua, Cuba. You know, they don't want to come here and visit New Nicaragua with AOC and the socialists running America. You know, they'll be making a beeline to go back home because it's, you know, if we could have socialism and better weather in our home countries. You know.
I think that's an important point that goes forward, and it really is in many ways, to kind of sort of reinforce what you're saying, reflects the evolution of the coalition that Trump put together in 2016. Now, obviously, it remains to be seen. It's looking a little dark here, but you see the kind of numbers where essentially lunch pail working class voters that traditionally had been Democratic, that had traditionally been union voters, have been gravitating towards the Republican Party. So obviously Michigan, even where it is extremely competitive. It hadn't been in the Obama years. So we're seeing that shift. On the other hand, to be clear, the Republicans have lost ground in the upper income and upper educated suburbs, but they picked up elsewhere. So this is kind of the realignment that's taking place.
Yeah, and I think we saw a lot of big wins, you know, no matter how the presidential election shakes up. And I think that the market reflected this today. We are safe from, you know, raising taxes to a massive extent. We're safe from I think, some major taking place because we were able to keep the Senate majority. And because, I mean, we did not flip the House, obviously, but we did pick up more seats than I think a lot of us were expecting us to. So those were really big wins there. And also, you know, repping the YRs, we did have, I think it was 14 young Republicans elected to the Congress last night, which is really, really awesome and impressive.
And we did very well. We won that Madison Cawthorn seat in North Carolina, which is the old Mark Meadows seat. You know, North Carolina retains control of the state legislature. Texas controls the state legislature.
Picked up seats.
Yep. Redistricting, we're going to run the tables.
And see, that's a really important thing for the House going forward, which is that the large states that are under what they call trifecta control in Florida and Texas are large states, but they're also states that are picking up congressional seats. Candidly, California has just about done everything it can do to get rid of Republicans. And I don't know that they're gaining a seat or they're just holding. I don't know that they're losing one or they're just holding even. I think that remains to be seen. But there's less that they can do. The same is true in New York, where you basically have the map of upstate and downstate. Mm-hmm. So the opportunities for redistricting, again, for a Maryland audience, that's maybe something we shouldn't be talking about. are that an opportunity to kind of strengthen the outlook for Republican candidates in 2022.
Yeah, and super long term, as more and more people you're seeing fleeing California and New York because they just don't like what's happening there, and because of the result, I would say, of Democratic leadership, it'll be really interesting to see, I guess maybe a decade or so down the line, if that starts to restructure those states. I mean, I am told that Virginia used to actually be a solidly Republican state, and that's no longer the case. So
no, it was. I mean, Northern Virginia used to have 2 Republican congressmen. At one point, when I was at George Washington, we had 3. You had Stan Paris, you had what do you call Frank Wolf,
yeah,
and
so
Tom Davis.
over time, we could potentially see those shifts in either California or New York. I mean, definitely long term.
Speaking of California, one of the couple of interesting referendums that are worth of note was that in California, I think it was Ward, help me out here, Dwight. Anyway, it was an initiative in the 90s that essentially banned affirmative action, saying that you couldn't take race and other legally protected categories into consideration for advantage. The efforts to repeal that failed. And what's interesting there is the indications are there was an Asian voters were more than a little concerned that they would lose opportunities as a result of moving away from a purely merit-based system for some of these benefits.
I do want to totally change the subject for a second, just because I'm switching off between watching the 2 of you and also watching Fox News on mute. But they are showing a live stream of supposedly counting ballots in Philadelphia right now, and that room is completely empty. Obviously, I don't know what they're talking about, but I'm not sure if there's something going on there.
But I tell you, see this. I remember 2000. As I've told people today, I am not 27 years old. It is not 2000. I'm getting too old. I need to have election day settled on election day, not election week, election month.
Well, I'll tell you what, I had to go to a doctor's appointment earlier, and you go, they take your weight and they just take my blood pressure or whatever. She goes, your heart rate's really high. I'm just like, I wonder if she understands what's going on right now.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Here's the other stuff. I think one, we are doing. I think this is not a debt. I mean, I'd be greatly and deeply saddened if President Trump were to lose, which I don't think it's going to happen, because I think we're going to run the tables and keep Pennsylvania in our column, and I think we might flip Arizona and win Nevada.
I mean, I'm keeping the faith, as Joe Biden said last night, but I am keeping.
That was Billy Joel that said that, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Biden has a way of coming up with plagiarism. There's a great tool that we've got to use. I use Grammarly for my writing, and they've got a great tool. If you drop text in, you can identify where it came from, so you can figure out whether or not there's plagiarism. It's actually something that a lot of schools have been using for the last couple of years. We're gonna have to start using that on a more regular basis to check what's going on.
Yeah. So I think we should take a couple of minutes, although I am also reading a headline that says North Carolina won't update election results for over a week. So we can talk about that later.
I'm sorry, what happening?
It says North Carolina won't update election results for over a week.
Okay.
Well, that's something we've got a guest on Friday night that we're going to have to talk to him about.
Politics for more on that. But I do want to take a couple of minutes and let's talk about some of the things that we've learned after watching Maryland's more local elections. Obviously, Maryland, very much a blue state. I don't think there's anything shocking about the way things turned out on the Congress races and also at the presidential level. But, if you're looking down into the numbers, I mean, some of my friends that I was getting message from last night was Trump won over 30% of the vote here, which I think is more than anybody had expected him to get here, at least from the people I've been talking to.
I tell you what's the biggest shocker.
I think that Chris Palumbi pulled some really good numbers. I think Harriet pulled good numbers. Obviously not enough to win, which none of us honestly were expecting them to pull ahead, as nice as that would have been. But I think that it does say something to see, that they did actually pull numbers for Republicans.
Here's the thing. What is America saying? Republicans still retain control of the Senate. the Democrats' grip on Congress is slipping by Republicans picking up +5 seats, and there were like probably, I want to say, a handful of seats that they should have had a slam dunk. There's no reason why they lost. I mean, the Will Hurd seat, the Peter King seat should have been their seat, frankly, but they, is this America sending a message to Congress saying that, we don't care for your socialist ways? It's kind of like protecting themselves from their vote for Joe Biden and then trading it off and voting for the Republican. Our friend Darrell Issa is back in Congress. I believe he won his race last night.
Well, so what else are you seeing? What else are your takeaways from what we saw happening in Maryland last night and on some of our more local elections here?
Yeah, I tell you, my take on local races is, I appreciate when candidates run for office. As one who's done candidate recruitment for years, I appreciate when candidates run. And one thing I always tell candidates, it's an uphill fight, but you need to be in the game to take advantage of when the other team fumbles. You never know when there's going to be a bimbo eruption for your opponent, or if they're going to be caught cheating on their taxes. There's always the potential of that sort of stuff happening. And Hunter Biden does not live in Maryland, by the way, everyone. Just want to let everyone know,
All right. Well, I don't know if Chris Palumbi or Neil Parrott, if you guys watch this show, I mean, I think we should definitely have some of them on in the coming and to get their take on things. But
I didn't want to bother any of them today because. But
if you guys are listening, you guys both ran incredible campaigns, and I really hope that this is you guys running in the future, because I do think that there is a space in Maryland politics for the two of you.
And I think also one of the upshots of this whole thing is, I mean, I am probably very optimistic that the president will win re-election, and he's going to have a Republican Senate to work with, and he's going to have 5 more Republicans in the House,
Can we talk a little bit about the Senate, because there's a little bit more that needs to happen there for us, which is that we have the races, I should say, in Georgia, one of which will have a runoff, a second of which could have a runoff. So you've got a runoff, and it's interesting. If you add up the Republican totals and the Democratic totals, it really came pretty close. I think it was slightly ahead for the Republicans, but it was basically a 50-50 split. So the runoff is certainly going to be a competitive race. And the other interesting thing is David Perdue has to stay above 50% to avoid a runoff, as I understand it.
And he was above 50 last night, right?
Right now he is at 50.3, but of course, as we've said, they're still doing vote counting. I mean, they still have votes outstanding. So
you're Xeroxing off ballots in Atlanta.
Yeah. So he's got to stay above the 50%. Now, were he not to, of course, there'll be a runoff regardless for one seat, but were there not to be were he not to stay above 50%, what you would end up is having the interesting phenomena of the Republicans would end up, I think, by kind of count I've got, at 50 seats, with the 2 seats outstanding in Georgia. Again, if you had 2 seats subject to a runoff, there would be, in effect, a 2 seats grab to control the Senate. And the Democrats would have to win basically both of them, or else, and that would only give them obviously control with assuming Biden wins and Kamala Harris becomes vice president. So if Perdue stays above it, it then kind of, the Republicans appear to move up to 51 seat, which basically I think kind of reduces the stakes in the election in Georgia for the runoff, because control no longer, how shall I say, pinges upon all of on those runoffs.
Yeah. I do want to bounce back, because like I said, I've been getting all my information on Michigan from the Michigan State Board of Elections. And let's see, can I share my screen on a live stream? Will that work?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Okay. So I do want to show, this was updated at 7:34. Again, closing the gap a little bit from what I was showing before, but it's still showing 51.9% going to Trump. So I'm not really sure because I don't know how these things work. I don't know where Fox News and other stations have gotten their information from, but I do find it interesting that
there are, I mean, you can look on the face of it, which is there are 5 counties that are not completely in yet. And if you look at right at the top there, I don't know if you can see, under the 2020 updated 7:34 p.m. and then right underneath 78 out of it, there are 5 counties outstanding. I don't think you have 5 counties when you actually look at the, let me go back.
I'm trying to see if I can get a breakdown of this by county here.
Let me go. Let me go back to that. So Michigan shows, so.
And I do want to point out also, since we are talking about Michigan, the other really important race here that we are watching is the John James Gary Peters race as well.
Well, let's look at that.
And that should be called for him they should call that. Right?
Well, right now I'm looking at other totals that have 2.683 million for Peters with 49.6%, and James at 2.623 million. So, essentially, Peters with a 60,000 vote lead with 2% going in.
Where are you looking? Because I am curious, because I mean, one would think the most reliable source of information for particular states, current stats would be that state Board of Election website.
Not necessarily.
Did you go to the Maryland Board of Election site last night at all?
No, not necessarily. I mean, if there's information outstanding that media can get ahead of getting it posted on the Board of Elections, then that becomes a better way of doing it.
Right.
Frankly.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal is pretty accurate on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Now what I'm looking at from 98 shows the county that had the flip still outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see what the Wayne County number is, but.
And I think it's one of those ones.
Michigan, we've had Republicans from Michigan in the past.
Sorry?
We've had Republicans win in Michigan as
of course.
senators,
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Spencer Abraham being one. And he was a great senator.
Well, I mean, it's probably an issue as to who's getting what totals from. Let me not turn us off. From Wayne County. That was actually the issue. Has been the issue all along in Michigan. Wayne County is Detroit, and I must say that when I looked at the numbers this morning at 8 o'clock or 8:30. It made me rather skeptical of our chances. Even at that point, I don't have the numbers right in front of me there. At that point, Biden was behind by several 100,000 votes, and James was up, I think, by 300,000 votes. But when you factored in the fact that while many of the I think that's what they call the outer counties, outland counties in Michigan had come in, Wayne County still was like under 50%. So then if you did the projection of what happens when you go forward, frankly, it was problematic. This is a little like what happens historically in Ohio with Cayuga County, which is Cleveland, which is that you have this horse race that takes place of waiting to see how many, whether the votes or the margins or the totals for that county are enough to overwhelm the county from the rest of the state.
Cool.
And it candidly this morning at about 8:30 or so, when I woke up and looked at it, Wayne County looked particularly worrisome, and that's, I think, the phenomena that we're seeing right now of a Trump lead essentially withering away. Again, it remains to be seen.
The other state we haven't spent a lot of time on, I don't think, and I think a lot of people, some people I'm seeing are actually very focused on, is Nevada.
Fascinating, yeah.
Nevada used to be a reliable Republican state.
Biden, but that doesn't seem to be what I'm hearing. And it is interesting to see so many states, which obviously cities are a big deal. To see like the entire thing is shaded red except for like 1 or 2 or 3 counties that are blue, and those counties are
Well, Nevada is a great example. I know the people in Reno will probably disagree with this, but essentially the state is Clark County, which is Las Vegas.
Yeah.
The last I looked, Biden was ahead by about 8,000 votes.
Yeah.
And again, different sources, different time, which isn't a lot. I mean, Nevada is a much larger state than it used to be.
And here's something else to take into account is this. The president has outperformed himself the way he's done better this time around than he did in 2016. Biden has done worse than Hillary in a lot of these areas where Hillary was I was watching the numbers. Hillary did much better than Biden did in Nevada. And that's, I think, I think the Hispanic vote is what's putting.
Well, yeah, that's fascinating. In fact, you look at some of the Senate races that we didn't contest. The New Mexico Senate race turned out to be much closer. I mean, we were much more competitive in a state like New Mexico. It's interesting. I think we talked about this maybe before, but Arizona, the Hispanic vote did very well for Biden. And that's a contrast to the success that we had in, I think there was a county in Texas that completely did a 180 that went heavily for Hillary and was very competitive for Trump this time around. So there were some regional variations between areas about that.
And here's something fascinating is President Trump got 40% of the vote in the state of New York, which is, better than I think any Republican's done in recent memory in the state of New York. I don't think he did better in New York this time than he did 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I think he got about 35% of the vote. So, I mean,
okay, I don't know. Yeah,
message is resonating. I think it is, and here is the outlier scenario. Let's say hypothetically Joe Biden somehow finds a way to steal the votes and win the election, right?
Could we just
fine?
Let's be careful about that. Okay.
And but here's the thing: what would happen?
Can I elaborate on that?
Sure.
Is we spent just about 4 years having when the president, after the president was electing, having to deal with the canard about Russian interference having affected the election. And there's still scores and scores and scores of people millions of people who continued to believe that. So let's focus on where there's real hard evidence of chicanery and deal with that rather than just to use this kind of offhand.
But my point is how will they deal with public citizen, former President Trump, if he's doing rallies, just like he did right now, if he's doing these massive rallies going up to the midterm elections? I think that's going to hurt the Democrats coming to 2022.
I feel like they can come after him with more kind of.
I think they'll try to indict him, quite frankly.
More of a lockdown phase. I think they'll come after him more strongly if he's out of office at that time.
Oh, I think you're good. I mean, I think the folks in New York will do it, and it's interesting because you put your finger on it's potentially a real double-edged sword for them, because it also really kind of stirs up the base, if you will, stirs up people in the middle who say, kind of leave them alone now. I mean, you impeached them. You really weren't able to prove anything. What's the latest set of charges?
And the other thing I think they've been talking about a lot on the news cycles that's interesting is what is the future now for pollsters and that industry? Because, I mean, it seems like they really didn't learn anything from 2016. The joke I heard today was the most accurate pollster we have is Michael Moore, which is kind of.
Well, take a look at Maine, right? Now, Maine is a state that.
They got ranked choice voting there, too.
Sorry?
They got ranked choice voting.
Well, quite apart from that. It's a relatively small state. It's I don't want to say that they're not different groups. There's the French Canadians. There's the old. I mean, there's some categories, but it's not as complex as, say, a state like Florida is. The polls for Susan Collins were consistently wrong.
Yeah.
Can I give props Dwight, who is ever, if there's a drop of water in a glass for Republicans, Dwight will say it's at least half full and it's about to overflow.
Well, Mark,
but let me finish here. So we'll put that in context. You did point out that Sue Collins, so you had heard over the weekend that she was moving up. So whatever the hell happened, every single pollster was wrong.
And also remember, I was with Susan's original campaign in '96. You know, I was a little worried when she had a great big sign that we were at the Bangor airport, welcome, Mr. President. And that, but here's the
okay.
My point is this. I know how Susan campaigns, and when Susan ran against a very popular former governor, Joe Brennan, Susan beat Joe Brennan, and that was probably one of her toughest races until this past year. And the Susan connects with people is because she knows how to do retail politics. And that's what wins it for her. She's really well liked in Bangor and Millinocket and the Canadian frontier, as I like to call it, Dexter.
People have in really small states have a personal relationship with their senator. I mean, they've over the years, she's been in for a long time. That just counts for a lot. It's you're absolutely right.
Her opponent was more of a Portland guy, and it's kind of like how it's a lot of states that have one big city. I mean, Maryland was like this for a long time. We hated Baltimore City. We hated everybody from Baltimore. We thought Baltimore people were crooked.
Now we like them, right?
Well, no.
Sorry.
My point is this.
Yes.
That was the view, and that's the perception in Maine. If you're not from the greater Portland area, you think those people in Portland are these sophisticated country clubbers who basically make fun of people who live in Bangor and Orono and Millinocket and Dexter. You know, they're basically a bunch of rubes.
My original question here, which is, what do you think is the future of the polling industry? Because clearly they've demonstrated that they're not learning anything.
We all know that I got my phone here. I mean, it used to be done with landline. Phone calls would be done with landline. Well, actually, there was a time when they did face-to-face, but they would do landlines. Who the hell has a landline anymore?
I've got two.
Okay, but so cell phones, lots of people, if they don't know the number, won't pick it up or they won't participate. They have huge problems. But so one of the solutions that some people have recommended are using the quote futures or gambling markets as a kind of an indicator. And that's useful because Nate Silver, I just read the book he did, talks that really we need kind of a better way of looking at data, which is on probabilities. And there's a kind of whole analysis of mathematical approach to being able to do that. That said, those markets really did a terrible job. They overwhelmingly showed going into election day and on election day, Biden winning.
They flipped so much last night.
And then last night they flipped the other way. Basically 80, complete showed Trump overwhelming favorite, and now they've switched back. And I'm going to do something that Dwight likes to do a lot. I'm going to go back 16 years to 2004. The exact same phenomena happened with President Bush when he was running for re-election. The exit polls came out during the day, election day, and
I remember that Matt Drudge headline in the afternoon.
They went crazy that the
quote Bush
markets crashed for Bush, and it looked like Kerry was going to win, and the assumptions had done a 180 and what have you. And of course, we all know what really happened. The good news is that was a day that I was appropriately out campaigning and working, so I had no idea what the hell was going on. And
you were party chairman then,
the markets, weren't you? Just about. I hadn't actually started. No, I wasn't not till 8. That happened. So those aren't necessarily better indicators. They seem to be manic depressive.
And
I do want to talk about one more. I have one more question.
Please.
I'm talking about what's going to go on in Montgomery County coming this Friday. Oh my gosh, please don't tell me I just lost the question. Ah.
Montgomery County. So
Lockdown
9D lost.
Well, I was going to talk more about what Mark Ulrich is trying to get passed by the council on this Friday. But it's looking like we're going to take a step back, and that Mark Ulrich wants to move us into 25% indoor dining capacity, moving into winter, which does not bode well for restaurants, and maximum 25 people for gatherings, amongst other things. And that's including limiting capacity in houses of worship and gyms.
And I don't see. Here's a couple things. Let's just talk real quick about Montgomery County. The 9D failed, and there's we can get into this on another show about the merits of why it failed and all that. But here's the thing: Republicans, the Democrats just added 2 more councilmanic seats now. They will draw the map. They're not going to be in Tacoma Park. They'll be somewhere else. But that means we have 2 more seats we could fight them on, quite frankly, because they're going to have to move. They're still going to have to move the districts around a little bit. Perhaps maybe Councilmanic 2 becomes a little bit better for us, a 50-50. That's probably the best the Republicans will get in Montgomery County is a 50-50 district.
It having been involved with redistricting, well, at least 10 years ago, or I guess it was 8 years ago. It's tough to do that. I mean, you could create a purely up county district. It's tough to do that, and there's no reason why they would. So,
and you can't really get a 50-50 district. But let me tell you, if we get a 60-40 district, a good candidate can still win that.
Absolutely.
Connie Morella, to my chagrin, she won when the district was changing.
And let's keep in mind that Howie Dennis, when he was on the council, was not in the most Republican district by a long shot. Actually,
no, not at all.
Probably Nancy Dasick was.
Yeah.
But he was a standout candidate who really knew his district.
And Howie knows retail politics, like
knows
Susan
how
Collins.
Retail politics.
Like I'm gonna bring in a little bit of extra side cash. Maybe
we need to have Howie on to talk about the raccoon story.
I'm gonna bring in some side cash. Maybe I'll run a second job on the side.
But they get paid very well in Montgomery County. The council can't, folks.
I can do that on top of my other job. Maybe we'll see.
You can, because it's not. I think it's what the council meets twice a week or once a week in the evenings.
Well, committees and all that other stuff.
You've got staff. You can send Dan McHugh to go to those things for you.
I remembered my other question. So one of the other things I've heard talked about today is one of the things that Joe Biden ran on, and one of the things that they kept saying he was known for, and they kept trying, they were using John McCain's wife to try and drive this point home, is that he was very much known for working across the aisle. And so there's a lot of, I've even heard Republicans saying if there's one good thing that could come out of this, I don't think it'll last long, because I do think that if he does win, they're going to try and replace him very quickly with Kamala Harris. Could Biden be a candidate who tries to unite the parties across lines, or tries to unite you? I personally don't think it's going to happen, just because
well, let me ask, I think it depends on the issue that Biden decides to work on and push for. And one of the challenges he has with that is he's still got Nancy Pelosi and the squad and the progressives, the authoritarian left in the Democratic Party. So while he might be able, if his triangulation just involved the Senate, maybe he could do it, and then it would depend on what the issue was that he's going to push. But help me out here. What, absent being able to push things through, basically a House Democratic agenda that goes through the Senate, what exactly is Joe Biden's agenda that he would want to do that?
Right. I agree with you. And again, I don't think there is that opportunity for him to really unite the people across both parties, aside from the people in power, but the people
right.
Because of, I don't know if you guys saw that video that went around of Bernie Sanders on the Zoom call with the squad, and this is how we're going to push our far left agenda through with Biden as president. And again, I don't think Biden will be in power through a full fourth term should he take office. Kamala Harris is very much further left than he is.
Yep.
I just don't see a way that people are going to be united after this. We're so
polarized. We're not going to be. And I hate to say it, this goes all the way back to 2000 when President Bush, after 9/11, made an honest effort to work with the other side. And what did they do? I mean, what were they doing on 9/11?
Well, but wait. A good example is George Bush. And while a lot of us are not particularly fans of No Child Left Behind, that is an example of a president who was able to pick an issue and work across the island. So let's say, let's pick one of the top legislative agendas that is dear on many Democrats' wish list would be some kind of green energy initiative. Biden has got a real problem of trying to balance the interests of, if he's going to negotiate with the Senate, but then he's got to deal with the House, which is really very, very strong. I mean, it's hard for me to do it. I mean, that's one set of issue that is open for negotiation. And of course, then the other one has been immigration, but we kind of know how that's turned out. I maintain that you could, a quote skinny bill on immigration would absolutely inflame the left. So it's hard for me to see which is the issue that has that possibility for him.
And also, Mark, real quick, I just got word we have taken back Staten Island.
Woohoo! That's where my mom was born.
That's Staten Island. Max Rose used to be
Democrat.
We took that back. Yeah, we took that back.
They declared that, or
yep, it's we have declared it. I mean, this is
now was that counted in the 5 already, or is that a 6?
No, this would probably be number 6.
Oh, that's good.
And this is also, Mark, if you look at New York City now, you've got the red in Staten Island, then you get the red in Nassau County and Suffolk County. I think, we could recapture Long Island like we did back in the heydays of the 90s with Mike Forbes.
All right, we gotta move this back away from the Long Island talk. I think we did not pick up the seat you thought we did in Virginia.
We didn't. Abigail Spanberger? I thought she lost.
No, I don't think so.
She won. I saw that.
Sorry?
She won her race.
She won?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, well. We got another bite at the apple in 2 years.
There you go.
So I've also found it really interesting. It seems like Fox News was calling races. Arizona's one that stands out right now. Also, long before most other news networks, I mean, you think they would be calling, ABC and CNN would be calling as soon as possible for Biden, just because it seems to be following with the trend that we see in the media. So I found it really interesting. And they have doubled and tripled and quadrupled down, because every time that they bring on somebody from the decision room, they're like, are you sure you're not going to backtrack on Arizona? Are you sure? And like, we are so sure that we're not. And a bunch of, I know ABC has retracted, their projection of Arizona going to Biden. So I found that interesting, that Fox has really been kind of leading the pack when it comes to actually making projection calls. What do you guys think?
It's harder this year, I think. I mean, and I don't know their methodology. It's harder to do this year because of obviously the mix of same-day votings, mail-in voting, and early voting. And there are, quote, assumptions that people make about what the composition is, that maybe early voting is more Democratic, same day, current, election day voting is more Republican, mail-in can be a bit of a mix. And you really need to know what was counted already, because that can affect it. In Maryland, they started counting mail-in votes right away. And the other thing is a bit of a point of confusion is whether or not the parties had active programs to encourage mail-in ballots. It was one of the arguments that the Arizona party was making, that the assumptions about mail-in votes were flawed, because they said they had a really active program that they were trying to make sure that Republicans who requested ballots send it in. I know I've seen in Maryland where we, the state party, have tested some of this stuff. These strategies can make a huge difference. If you have a chase program, somebody's going after.
Yeah. And North Carolina GOP, they had a really good program. Republicans outperformed Democrats in early voting in North Carolina.
Right.
And that's another reason why I'm very,
which is a bit of, see, so here's the issue. That's a change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that becomes kind of a question mark, because if Republicans in fact voted early, does that mean that the composition of the votes that are coming in now are more likely to be Democratic? So if you think about it as a balloon that's moving around, so again, to come back to Jackie's point about the decision desk, they're really faced with some tough challenges because they don't have the historic patterns to rely on. And B, they have to take into account some of the push and pull that may have taken place in a particular state.
And here's the other thing. I think North Carolina, we have a lot of the rural, it could be, this could be more rural votes that are coming in, which are more generically more Republican, Western and Eastern, I mean, Mecklenburg County, I think, which is Charlotte, and Beaufort County, as I was taught the other day, a couple weeks ago, that's how it's from. Beaufort County went solid for Trump, which is a rural county.
Mecklenburg? No.
Mecklenburg County is Charlotte, I believe.
That would not be going solid for Trump. I'd be
no. I said no.
Yeah.
Beaufort. No, Beaufort. I said
Beaufort. Oh, I'm
Beaufort.
Sorry. Yeah, of course. Okay,
which us Yankees pronounce as Buford, but they call it
Beaufort. Yeah. And it takes a lot of those. I mean, that is the key to the Trump whatever, is it takes a lot of those smaller rural counties to make up for the big urban counties.
And, by the way, we are running up to 8:15. We can go a little bit longer if you guys want, but
right now I think I'm ready to go eat.
But I will say, I don't know what's going to happen with Arizona. I'm cautiously optimistic it could flip red, but I do think it'd be very, very interesting if after all that double, triple down, if it does flip red, what's going to come out of the decision desk, what they're going to want to have, what they're going to have to say for themselves.
We got our bad. By the way, here's the thing. I think I understand Newsmax has yet to call any blue states.
What?
No, Newsmax.
Has Jerry Cave called any states yet?
Yes, Jerry has called all the red states and none of the blue states.
Called Trump winning at like 7:30 last night.
No, but Newsmax, here's the thing. Newsmax, they're the more conservative, they've got our friend Sean Spicer's on there, and
my right friends are saying Fox News is crap. Go watch Newsmax.
They say One America Network. I thought
that actually was one. Can I do a digression? I can't remember if it was. I think it was in 2012. We had a presidential watch party back when we go together, and we naturally had Fox on the big screen, and frankly, things were not coming in the way we thought the way we were expecting, and somebody was screaming that Fox was a bunch of liberals and we ought to change the channels. And all I wanted to do, I bit my lip, but I wanted to say, if you think we're going to get better returns on another network,
right?
And that's before One American Network and Newsmax,
Yeah, I know. You're going to have to find yourself an alternative universe where you're going to win this.
I tell you, here's the flip side. I will tell you this: win, lose, or draw, we will have another Republican running in 2024 because the president can only run for 2 terms because of Republicans shot themselves in the foot after FDR. Because I think we could have gotten 3 terms out of Eisenhower and 3 terms out of Reagan, frankly, but and maybe 3 terms out of Nixon.
At the end of the day, this country will still be standing in 4 years.
Did you see what he just did, Jackie? You see what he just snuck in?
It's always there. But yes, sorry. At the end of the day, the United States of America will still be here in 4 years. We're going to move past this in one way or another. And all we can do now is look ahead. We have midterms in 2 years. We have a governor's race coming up in Maryland. We have things.
And by the way, also next year, Virginia has a governor's race. I think the big fight on the Virginia side is Terry McAuliffe versus the Justin Fairfax crowd. And I think Terry McAuliffe is going to have a run. Is going to have a run for his money on this one because I think the progressive wing of the Democrat Party is going to be behind Justin Fairfax. They're not going to probably likely back Terry McAuliffe because Terry McAuliffe.
Okay, I'm putting a pin in that. So we're wrapping up.
Yep.
please tune in
to be continued.
To be continued.
Going on. And tune in next Wednesday for another direct line. We're going to try and bring you some of our Maryland candidates as the weeks go forward.
Hopefully next week we'll have we'll have our president declared.
Hopefully.
There was a Freudian slip if I ever heard one.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you later.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.